Welcome to Hacking Your Leadership. I'm Chris.
And I'm Lorenzo.
And Lorenzo, on this episode, what I want to talk about is how it seems like recently, and I mean like over the last year or two, it seems like things are moving faster than they've moved in the past. And that is leading to kind of a feeling that the things on my plate as an employee or as a leader, there's so many more of them that would fall into the urgent category versus the, important category. Whereas before it was, more important things and less urgent things. I feel like there's been a shift. Do you feel this too?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I think in a lot of things, in how we consume content, in how we expect to get answers from things, and how quickly we can communicate or connect with someone, and how quickly we think that we can learn something and apply it. Yeah, I think in general there's just a speed to things that is very different. Not just at work, but just in general in life. And I think it's playing itself out into places that when you have this constant feel of urgency, when you have this constant speed of things, while it can feel like you're getting a lot of work done, I think there's a part of this that is like not everyone is built for or can sustain speed at that pace. And I think that's when you start to really run into I don't think it makes things much more difficult, whether it's through leadership or whether it's like trying to help bring others along. Like, I don't know. I feel that there's just a lot going on, and that this increase in speed is causing a lot of, for lack of a better term, like a lot of accidents you'd have on a freeway. You know what I'm saying? Just like a lot of,
right.
There's so much speed, and the urgency is so quick that not everybody is comfortable with or experienced in how to handle it.
I think you're right about that. I think it's not just an x-axis though. There's an x-axis and a y-axis. So it's if you think about the speed and the pace at which things are going, clearly people will have different levels of comfort of what's okay with them and how long they can sustain something. And some people can last longer than others, and others cannot. But that's for each person to kind of figure out on their own. But it's not just the speed at which things move. The other variable is whether or not the things that you're doing are actually in spirit of something that is bigger and more important versus just, for lack of a better word, busy work, Mm-hmm. And I think that I can only speak for myself, but a sustained pace that is faster than what I could sustain forever. So something that is not like forever. I have to, at some point, I can't do it forever, but whatever that speed is, I can last longer at that speed if the things that I'm doing are in spirit of something broader or more strategic versus just busy work. The busy work, I feel like it would burn me out faster, and I think I'm not alone in that.
Yeah, I agree. I completely agree. I think that there's a lot. There's a lot of just this overall, maybe vibe or energy in that space for a lot of people. And then I think about specifically within leadership and leading people,
Mm-hmm.
When you have people that feel that way, and then you have your people that also feel that way to a degree, it can feel like the only way to get through it is to go faster. And that can cause even more issues, because you're like, can we just get through this? If we can just get through this, and then you get through it, and it's like, but
Like
if we
there's
can
an
just
end.
get through this one, yeah, exactly,
Yeah.
right, yeah, like there's an end, and there's not, and I think that's where that's kind of where it's running into some of these really, really heavy walls, is that it's just kind of like it's not sustainable, and there is no end, and I think it's a larger. It's a larger thing than just maybe what people feel at work or in the responsibilities they have in their roles.
There was the TV show Scrubs. I used to watch that a long time ago. And there was a moment in one of the episodes where one of the characters has this kind of like realization that the hospital it was still open and running even when they weren't there. And it's just one of those things where it's like, in a lot of businesses, when the business closes, then you go home for the day, and then business can't be done because it's just nobody's there anymore. And in most people who have jobs, that's the way it works. Like the business stops at some point and then it picks up again the next day. And I think it's easier to fall into the trap of thinking, oh, if I can just get through this, then it'll be okay. Like you can do that day after day after day, thinking that because there's an end to the business for that day or that week or that quarter or whatever it is you want to rationalize, that somehow the next one will be different, the next day or the next week or the next quarter. And when you have a situation like, doctors in hospitals and ERs where it's like, no matter, there's always going to be people coming in 24 hours a day, 365 days a year, people will come in needing medical care. And at some point you still got to go home as a doctor and just trust that someone else is going to be there instead, because there's no way to do it forever. And so, if you have this kind of rhythm that remembers what it was like to not have it be like this, because I don't think it's been like this it's not like it's been a generation, it's been a few years. And if you remember back to what it was like before that, then you start to think, okay, what's the best way to get it back to that? And if the best way to get it back to that is to get through it as quickly as you can, that implies that the things that you are being asked to do are actually real. They're actually the real strategic things. But if you do that long enough and you're not getting through it, at some point you have to say to yourself, are these actually the things that I should be doing? Are these the strategic things that will get me and my team towards a goal? Or am I just being swamped in daily tasks and busy work?
Yeah, I think it's a great call out. I think it's like, I think in those moments where, I don't know, I'm processing out loud as I talk here. And I think of like, when I think about like marathon runners and advice from people that I've heard in spaces like that, it's kind of like, just get to the next mile marker. You know what I'm saying? Like just kind of get the thing done that's right in front of you, and then get the next thing done, and then get the next thing done. And I think that, to what you're talking about, the temptation here a lot of times is, let me do the things that I know I can walk away and say I accomplished them.
Right.
And so a lot of times those are the shorter term things, the right now things, the today things. And we then place this urgency and prioritization on these things and don't ever think about or spend much time realizing kind of what are we missing in the bigger picture? What's the larger strategy? Are we we're so head down focused on getting these things done that we could be running in the completely different direction. And so we finally pick our head up and realize I'm not even close to where I'm trying to get to, because I've been obsessed with just trying to get these things done in the now, because that's what felt better, to be able to walk away knowing that I accomplished them, without realizing that there's a larger space or larger place that I'm supposed to be, and I have to figure out how do I navigate the important things in the now, but also keep going in the direction. That becomes a real challenge for a lot of people, myself included.
Right. There was a commercial for QuickBooks maybe 20 years ago now, and it was a person who was a business owner in a pet store, and they were putting Post-it notes all over everything to try to remember things. Like when people had sent them an invoice, they'd write, it was all on Post-it notes, things kind of like hung up all over the place. And the QuickBooks slogan at the time that they used at the end of the commercial was, have you ever been so busy doing your job that you forget to do your job? And I always liked that way of framing it, because we can tell ourselves that the things that we're doing, that those are our job. And if we're doing that and it's burning us out, or it's not seeming to move the needle because they're just daily tasks and busy work, if we're framing it incorrectly, to me that says one of a couple of things. Either it means that we don't know what the strategy is. We don't know what the broader, larger, bigger picture strategy is that we should be working towards, or we know what it is, but we don't know how to make it happen. And either we don't have the leadership to help us get through there, or we don't know how to translate it to our teams because it hasn't been given to us in the correct way, or we haven't fully wrapped our brains around what that looks like, and we can't give it to our team. So we fill their day with busy work and daily tasks because we don't know how to articulate the broader strategy yet. Like there's a lot of little reasons that it could be, but it's not sustainable to do it that way, because if you're feeling it as a leader, your team is definitely feeling it, because they can understand what it feels like to go home after a day of work feeling like you accomplished something, that what you did was in spirit of something bigger and broader, something strategic, versus just I checked off 70 different boxes that were daily tasks that no one will even remember or care about the next day, because there'll be 70 more when I get here.
Yeah, and I think too, like I would say in most cases, those daily small tasks, in most cases, are actually pointing towards the right direction, right? In most places that I've seen, it's the obsession maybe with them and the ignoring of the larger place that you're going, which can happen, or it's that some of these tasks are based upon how you do them, how you go about approaching them, or the direction that you give. Some of these tasks can be enough to push you off course, and so like that is where taking the time to self-reflect, to think about it, to look at what are the things that you're doing in the short term, and what's the risk, what's the reward of doing them with urgency or prioritizing them for where you're trying to go in the long term. I think that this pace and this speed is making people think a lot more of, let me just get this short-term thing done. And we all know in like whatever that short-term thing is, and however you establish that and whatever the expectations are, eventually becomes the long-term thing. Yeah. And so it's much harder to adjust it, change it, address it when you're so far down the road of the decisions that you're making today. So I think for me, that's where I spend a lot of my own leadership time, is thinking about those things. Yes, this is important in the short term. Yes, these are things that I am maybe responsible for that I have to get done. How am I going to make sure that when I do them and how I do them, it's going to align with the longer tail on this thing that I'm trying to accomplish, or it's going to make sure that it's easier for people to connect the dots of where we're going as we're taking these steps and doing these short-term things, and how they are going to impact the longer vision of where I want a team to be. Like, I think it takes a lot more of that amount of time and a lot less of, hey, this is important, let's just get it done and move on to the next thing.
Right. And I also think that when you have a team of employees, like non-leadership people, just individual contributing employees who have been asked to do this for long enough, if they've been asked to do this for several quarters or a year or more in a row, of where their days are being filled with daily tasks and busy work that is not in spirit of a broader strategic goal, eventually those people will find a way to manage their own mental health and wellness by just figuring out what their own bandwidth is for the boxes they can check. Mm-hmm. And they'll just check off that many boxes. They'll do that many busy work, daily task things in order to not burn out or not, start hating their job. But then they'll get comfortable in that rhythm of doing it. It won't be in spirit of anything broader or more strategic, and it will become very difficult to re-engage them on something broader or more strategic once they've fallen into that trap or gone down that path of just getting comfortable. And it's really difficult for leaders to see when this is happening, because again, there's never a shortage of daily tasks to do. It's a constant waterfall of things coming in. And so you can't judge whether or not your people are being productive based on how many things they've done, because you can't see what kind of a dent it made in the list of daily tasks, because that list of daily tasks is constantly growing. And so you'll never be able to know whether or not this has happened with your people, and each of them have different thresholds. And so it's becomes really incumbent upon you as a leader to not let this happen to begin with, and to make sure that there is a heavy focus verbally from you and with your team on what the overall vision and strategic priorities are, so that their daily life and your daily life doesn't just get lost and bombarded by the busy work.
Absolutely. And with that, it brings us to this episode's 1-minute hack. But first, a few words from our sponsors.
All right, for this episode's 1-minute hack, here's what I want you to do. If you're a leader of people, you need to make sure that every conversation you have, whether it's presenting to your team as a whole or one-on-one with a person, that every single one, you find a way to integrate what the broader and larger strategic goals, visions, priorities are of your organization and your team within the context of anything you're talking about. So when you're bringing up the daily tasks, the things that seem urgent in the moment, it's important that you tie it in to what the broader strategic vision is when you're asking somebody to do these tasks, or when you're asking when you're putting more on their plate that they might have a hard time aligning with the broader vision. You need to align it for them, and it's going to feel repetitious. It's going to feel like you say this all the time, and that you're going to think to yourself, I'm probably annoying these people when I say this again because they heard it 3 times yesterday and 4 times the day before. It doesn't matter. That's the goal. The goal is for them to hear it so many times that doesn't ever not become the most important thing, that the daily tasks and the busy work don't ever supersede that strategic vision as the most important thing. The only way that can happen is if you're talking about it constantly and you're aligning all of those daily tasks with that strategic vision when you're delegating them or assigning them to people. If you do that well, you're far less likely to have people lose sight of it.
Yeah, communication aspect of this is so critical and important, and continually, to your point, to continue to talk about it and consider it and discuss it, and figure that out. And like, that's part of the role of a leader, is when we talk about like vision and purpose and things that you think about as a leader, like you have to be able to take these tasks, these goals, the short term, and tie it to the long term, and tie it to a larger vision. Discuss and remind people about what it is that you're looking to achieve, and where you want the team to be, and how you want the team to get the work done. That really is a big part of leadership when it comes to kind of painting that picture, and where you're going. And again, not every single thing is going to fit into that space. There are going to be things where you have to simply say, like, look, we're being asked to get this done, and we need to get this done. And it's not maybe a part of our larger vision of where we're going, but it's important work that has to be done for this reason. You still need to give the why, you still need to talk through it. But I think that the more you can share, the more you can provide context and perspective in tying the short term to the long term, I think is critical for any team.
Yeah, I think you're spot on with that. I also think that this is where it becomes important as a leader for you to have a schedule where you write down the things that are important to you to get done, and then go back after the week is over and debrief with yourself on whether or not you did spend that time getting those things done. This is a really important thing to do. It's a 7 habits thing, 7 habits of highly effective people. This idea of not just putting down what is important to you, but going back and debriefing to see if you actually did those things. Because it's easy to put things on the schedule that can fill up your schedule, that you can say, oh yeah, I did that thing. If you're more specific about it, more specific about what the strategy is and who you're going to talk to about it and how much time you're spending on it, actually delegating time to yourself to spend on these things, and then go back and say to yourself, okay, how much time did I actually spend on this? This is where you find out what's really important to you. It's not important because it got put onto your schedule. It's important because you kept it, because you actually put that time in. And if it's not important, then you won't. But kind of getting into a rhythm of doing that will show you whether or not you're doing the right things to move the needle, and keeping that larger strategic vision at the forefront of what's important to you is if you're actually spending the time talking about it. And it's difficult to know whether you've done that unless you schedule it and go back to it and keep looking at it.
Absolutely. And with that, it brings us to the end of this episode. This is Hacking Leadership. I'm Lorenzo.
And I'm Chris.
And we'll talk to you all next time.